Hello designers, my name is Karthik from Design School for WordPress Beginners, the place where I teach you how to design, build and customize your WordPress websites. If you're new here, consider subscribing. Let's get into the video. This is a complete guide to Elementor. So no matter if you're completely new to Elementor or coming from another page builder such as Divi Builder or Beaver Builder, this tutorial will help you understand Elementor. So for the sake of convenience, we'll divide this tutorial into 4 main parts. The first part is to install and activate Elementor and Elementor Pro. The second part is understanding various settings and options that you have on your WordPress dashboard for Elementor. Third part will teach you how to reach the Elementor editor interface where all the magic happens, where you actually design your templates or your posts or pages. And the fourth and final part is actually the design process, where you actually design the templates using Elementor. Before installing and activating Elementor and Elementor Pro, you might want to know what exactly is Elementor. Well, Elementor is a page builder. It will help you design your WordPress pages, posts, and if you have the Pro version, you can design your WordPress website, custom header, footer, your categories page, your search results page, and a lot more. All this without having to write a single piece of code using the drag and drop interface. So that's what Elementor effectively is. With that being said, let's get into part 1. So installing Elementor free version is fairly simple. You just need to click on plugins, click on add new from your WordPress dashboard, and once it loads, just search for Elementor and here it is, Elementor Page Builder. So you can simply click on install and activate and your free version of Elementor will be activated just like that. And you need to get the pro version of Elementor by buying from elementor.com, and once you buy that, you need to upload it using this. Again, I have a clear video explaining how to do that. So if you want to know how to install and activate the pro version of Elementor, I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. It's a 2-step process. So that's part 1. Before you start working with Elementor or Elementor Pro, it's always better to install these themes. And the themes are Astra, it has a free version, and the Pro version is available at wpastra.com. I'll leave a link to everything in the description. And there's GeneratePress, which is a really great theme and it's lightweight, built for Elementor and other page builders. You can search for GeneratePress. I already have it active on my theme, on my website, so you can install and activate it. And there's another theme called OceanWP. And these 3 themes are actually recommended by the official Elementor website. So they know that Elementor works well with these themes. Of course, it's supposed to work with most of the themes, and it will. I think around 90% themes, it will work with around 90% themes. But if you really want your work to not be interrupted by some weird errors, just install Astra, GeneratePress or OceanWP and you're really good to go. And I've also seen that OceanWP at times has few errors, so it's better to get Astra or GeneratePress. I'm actually using GeneratePress on my website, so it's up to you. Pick one of these 3 and you're good to go. Part 2, settings and options. There are various elements and various settings and options that you have in the backend of Elementor that you can tweak so that you can have a better workflow. And of course, you can come back to these settings at any time and change them whenever you want. However, for this video, we'll just go ahead and tweak all the ones that we need right now. Starting with general, once you click on settings, you'll be taken to the general tab where you can have these options. What are these? Well, if you uncheck these options, you won't be able to use Elementor on these particular posts or custom post types. As you can see, posts and pages are custom post types or basically post types defined by WordPress. And if you install any third-party plugin such as this one, you'll have to tick this option before you can start editing them with Elementor. And of course, this is a feature exclusive to Elementor. So if you have any third-party custom post types, make sure you select them and click on Save Changes so that you can edit those post types with Elementor as well. And you can disable default colors. Elementor will load its own colors if you uncheck this, and if you check this, Instead of loading Elementor default colors and default fonts, Elementor will pick the fonts and colors that you've used in the theme. And by theme, it is actually the current theme that it's referring to. So if you activate any other theme, again, maybe you have to check with that or change colors in that particular theme. And you can also opt in for data tracking if you want to make Elementor better. That's all completely optional. So once you check all the options that you need, you can click on Save Changes. Under Style, you can specify generic fonts such as serif or sans serif if the fonts that you specified are unavailable for some reason. Mostly the fonts used in Elementor are Google fonts and they're almost available at all times. If they're not, well, you can specify or pick the font that is available on the user system. Width, this specifies how long your content should be. You can leave these as is, and if you want to change the tablet breakpoint, so what are these tablet breakpoint and mobile breakpoint? Well, it's the width at which your Elementor desktop design changes to a tablet or a mobile one. And Elementor has by default 3 breakpoints. One is the default desktop view in which you design your website for desktop, and then you can switch to tablet view and then design your website for tablets, and again you can switch to your mobile view and design your website specifically for mobile. So if you want to change these values, you can simply type in the width at which you want the tablet layout to appear and the width at which the mobile layout to appear, and we'll get to that in a minute. And lightbox is basically when you click on an image, that image opens up as a pop-up. So if you check the lightbox option here, this is what will happen. So whenever you add an image using the image widget in Elementor or any other WordPress content, and you click on image, well, this is what it means. This is a lightbox image, and by default every image will become a lightbox image using this, unless and until you override it specifically. We'll talk about that in a minute. This integrations tab provides you a one-tab interface to integrate all third-party services with your Elementor widgets. So reCAPTCHA and all the mailing list providers are basically used by your Elementor's form widget. So you can simply type in your site key and secret key that you get by signing up for this, and then click on Save Changes so that you can use all these services or one of them, whichever you choose to, just by typing the credentials that you get from the vendor itself. And if you have a Creative Cloud subscription, you can type in your project ID so that you can integrate your Adobe typekit fonts with Elementor. So those fonts will be available to you to use anywhere you want across your Elementor interface. And advanced, you can leave this as is. You don't have to change any of them. Editing handles, you better hide them. So if you choose hide editing handles, these are the editing handles as you can see here. You can right click on them to get various options. Let's see what's the difference when we choose to show editing handles. So let me save the changes and let me reload the template. So when you hover over a section, column or a widget, basically they are the fundamental elements in Elementor. I'll talk about that in a bit, but this is a typical Elementor section. When you hover over them, the handles are shown, and when you hover over a column, you can duplicate it, add a new column and various other options. Similarly, if you hover over a widget, you can duplicate it or just close it or delete it. That's what these editing handles are. This was the functionality that was implemented in Elementor 1.0, and this used to be the default functionality. Now it's changed. You can simply click on hide, as you can right click on any element and get various options simply. You don't need editing handles. You can choose to hide it. If you find any difficulty, you can come back and choose to show editing handles. So they'll have the editing handles like this one. It's all up to you, but I recommend you hide them and practice right click. So right click on any element, you'll get various options. You don't need those editing handles. Next you have custom fonts. Well, you can get any fonts that you want from internet and use them in your Elementor projects. So they'll be available under settings. I'll show you that in a bit, but you can go to any website. There's a famous website called Font Squirrel, and make sure that you're downloading fonts in one of the formats specified in here. So you can click on add new font and you can name it anything, but you better name it. So I'll just pick this font. It says TTF. So I'll just say download TTF version of that font, and that font's TTF version is downloaded. Well, you can click on add font variation, and based on the type of file, you need to upload that file. So as I've downloaded TTF file, I need to upload it here. And the name can be anything, but you better name it with actual name. So it's Pacifico. So I'll just call it. It doesn't necessarily have to be the name that is specified in here. It can be any custom name. This will basically be used by Elementor to distinguish your font. So whatever keyword you type here, this particular font will be applied using this keyword. I'll show you that in a bit. So I typed the actual name, which is Pacifico, and I'll upload the TTF file that I've downloaded just now. So I'll just select file, and here it is. Wherever you have downloaded, just locate the font, and it should be in TTF version. So click on open, and it will upload that particular font to your website. So you can click on select font, and you can see that that font is uploaded in here. So I can use it in my project. I need to publish it, of course. And if you have other variations of your font, you can also upload them in a similar way. Anyway, I'll just settle with the TTF version or variation of my font. If you want to delete it, you can delete it as well. Let me publish this font. It's Pacifico, right? So let me publish this. Now you can also preview it from here, as you can see. Now I can use it with any text widget. So I can click on any text widget. Under typography, I can pick Pacifico because that's what I've uploaded. And it clearly shows that under custom fonts, I have Pacifico, which I just uploaded right now. You can also change this to anything. So whatever you change it to, that particular font will be applied in here. We'll talk about widgets in general in a later part. So this is how you upload custom fonts, and this is a feature limited to the pro version of Elementor, and even the role manager is a feature limited to the pro version of Elementor. Anyway, I'll close this. So what role manager will do is that it won't allow people with certain roles to access certain parts of your website. So you can click on each role. If you don't know what roles are, basically if you're an admin, and you can create user, and you can give him or assign him a role. So based on the role you assign, you can choose whether to have access to editor or content. So if you think that author shouldn't change your design, you can simply click on that and say, I don't want my author role user to access my templates and change content. So you can basically restrict the way in which he can modify content on your Elementor templates. We'll get into that in a bit. And once you choose your settings, don't forget to click on save changes. So the first option is regenerate CSS under general, which is available under tools. So if you have a caching plugin or a CDN, you might find that your styles won't be actually reflected. So you can click on regenerate files so that the most recent changes appear on your website. And the next option is to sync library. You don't have to manually sync your library. Elementor automatically syncs on a daily basis. You don't have to click on sync library every time. And if you find that your Elementor template is not loading, you can enable safe mode. So that will disable all third-party add-ons or themes and simply load the Elementor interface so that you can find the conflicting plugin, or if in case it's a theme. Debug bar, it will basically show all the templates used on a page. Let me enable it and show it to you. I'll click on save changes. So I can open any page, post or custom post type that is designed with Elementor, and there's an option called Elementor debugger because that's what we've enabled here. So it will show us various themes and page templates which are used. So it's basically telling us there's a page template, and there are few other things that are used on this page. So that's what debugger shows. It's not required, so you can simply disable it and save changes. And the next tab is replace URL. So they ask you to back up your database in case something goes wrong. You can restore it from that backup. It's basically used when you switch your site from HTTP to HTTPS using SSL certificate, or maybe when you've developed on an old site and maybe you're migrating all the Elementor templates to a new site, you can use this. You can simply enter your old site's URL. So it can be something like this. Maybe if your old site was google.com, sorry, this is HTTPS. And if your new site is apple.com, you can simply enter your old URL, new URL, and click on replace URL. If you have migrated from HTTP to HTTPS, you can simply enter old URL and just add HTTPS here, so that you won't have any mixed content problems and you won't have any broken links in your Elementor templates. That's what this effectively does. It's a neat little function to have it. And the next option is version control. Under this tab, you have an option to roll back to the last version or the last version that you were using. So maybe if you have updated from Elementor 2 to Elementor 2.5.3, you can roll back to the previous version. Meaning from 2.5.3 it will roll back to 2, which was your actual previous version. So think of it like a toggle switch. So you can toggle your version back. Of course, you can roll your free version and the pro version. You need to do it in order to ensure compatibility. And if you want to become a beta tester, you can simply enable it so that whenever there's a beta update released, you can update it to test all new features. That's what I do. I just love beta testing. If you want, you can turn on, or you can simply disable it. I'll just keep it enabled. I won't save any changes because I just left all the options as is. And under maintenance mode, if you're actually launching your website, you can develop it actively, and to anyone else who's not logged in, he'll just see a coming soon page. And you can choose the template. You can create a new page template from Elementor templates. We'll get to that in a minute. So let me choose boom page for now. So whenever user enters my website URL, he'll see coming soon with this template. So I'll just click on save changes, and he won't be able to access any part of my website. And there's a red indicator here saying that maintenance mode is on. So whenever a user is not logged in, which is general public, they won't be able to see any content on my website. You can also toggle maintenance mode, which usually requires you to tweak some minor changes. You can toggle this maintenance and choose a template for maintenance as well. I'll just say boom page. I'll click on save changes. And so I just opened my website in another browser, which is Safari, in which I'm not logged in. And I just see the boom page template. I don't see anything else. I don't see header. I don't see footer. I just see the template that I chose to appear here. So that's what you can create a better coming soon or maintenance mode template, and you can enable it, and you can actively develop your website while your users just see the coming soon page. You can also set custom access. Maybe you can give access or based on the role. So you can maybe have it for administrator, editor, and author, or maybe just for admin and SEO manager, so that they can work out on few SEO techniques even before launching the site. So that's what it does. So I'll just disable it. If you want to enable it, you can always come back here and enable maintenance mode. So under system info, you'll have information on your whole website. So the kind of server you're using and write permissions. So if there's something wrong, it will be displayed here. It's just for troubleshooting purposes. So everything's fine here. So there's no alert or anything of that sort. Everything's really fine, and it will just show all the various stats for debugging purposes. That's all it does. You can click on getting started, and there'll be a short video. You can watch the full guide here. You can click on get help, and it will effectively redirect you to Elementor's support website, where you can read about various knowledge based articles and a lot of other stuff. And if you're a pro customer, as I told you, you can avail their 24/7 support just by filing a ticket. This is also a quick link to their Facebook community and GitHub community. That's what it does. You can close this. So these two are basically some quick links for you to get started. And if you have installed any third-party add-ons, they might show up here, or they'll have a panel of their own. And license is basically for activating your key. So if you have pro version and if you want to renew your license or add a new license, you can click on this and add your new license key. That's what it does. We're done with part 2, which is tweaking settings and various options. Of course, you can come back to this whenever you want, and whenever you add a new third-party custom post type, make sure you come back to settings and select that particular custom post type so that you can customize them or edit them with Elementor. Part 3, reaching the Elementor interface. So how do you reach Elementor interface? There are two ways in which you can reach Elementor interface. The first way is directly by clicking on edit with Elementor. So you can open any post, page or custom post type with Elementor. So if you don't see edit with Elementor, you first need to click on edit. You can click edit first. So once the page loads, there will be a button called edit with Elementor. So if you click that, you will be taken to the Elementor interface. And similarly, you can have any page. And if you've already clicked on edit with Elementor, there will be a new option called edit with Elementor. But if just created a page, you won't have this option. So for that, you need to click on edit again. And once the page loads, you'll see a button called edit with Elementor. So you can click on that and you'll be taken to interface. Now, if you're unable to reach the Elementor editing screen, don't worry, I have a video covering 10 most common problems and fixes. So you can follow that and your fix must be one of them, and it already helped a ton of people fix their Elementor not loading screen. I'll leave a link to that in the description. So that's method 1 to reach the Elementor interface. So you can click on any post by clicking on edit first and then clicking on edit with Elementor. If you've already clicked with edit with Elementor, you can simply click on edit with Elementor and you'll be taken to Elementor interface. Similarly, the same thing applies to pages as well. And if you have more than one page builders like I do, don't try to edit the same page with two builders. So that will create a lot of conflicts and you don't want them. So either edit a page with Elementor or any other page builder that you have. Don't edit the same page with two builders. It will have a lot of conflicts. So what's the second way, or what is the second method to use Elementor? Well, the second method is here. In fact, the second method is really powerful. It's in the form of Elementor templates. If you have the free version, you'll just have access to saved templates. You won't have theme builder and pop-ups. So these are exclusive to the pro version of Elementor. So the way you work with templates is that you create a template for a page and then reuse it on other page or basically embed it. That's how it works. And all the templates have shortcodes. So you can simply paste the shortcode, and wherever there's text, you can paste the shortcode. And there's a template widget that you can use to embed Elementor templates. So we'll be focusing on the page and section templates for this tutorial, because these are the basic templates that you need to learn before you get started with theme builder or pop-ups. Once you master these, the same concepts apply to theme builder and pop-ups. And of course, there's a playlist called pop-up builder tutorial. So you can watch that playlist, and you can also watch how to design your website playlist so that you can learn how to do it with Elementor. But for the sake of convenience, I'll just create a page template. If you learn how to create a page in Elementor and work with various widgets, well, you'll be really comfortable with Elementor, and then you can apply the same thing to theme builder, which effectively allows you to design your custom header, footer, your archives page, 404 page, and a lot more. And pop-ups, of course, pop-ups have few special conditions and triggers. I've already explained all that. So there's a playlist called Design Your Website and Pop-up Builder playlist that you can check out so that you'll get comfortable with these two. Anyway, as you're a beginner, learn how to build pages first. The way you do that is by clicking on Add New here, or you can also click on Add New here. But before that, there's something called categories. So you can click on categories, you can create a new category and categorize your templates into various. So if you have two clients, you can have all the templates for client 1 and you can have different templates for client 2. So while creating template, you can specify the category in which the template should fit, and once you're done creating all the templates, you can filter these templates by clients or various categories that you have created here, and you can click on filter. So I'll have all the templates that are designed for client 1 here, or you can filter by the date created. So maybe in March you have created templates for client 1 and in February you worked for another client. You can simply click on this and get all the templates designed in that month and then export them or deliver them to your client. So that's how it works. So that's why there's a categories group and you don't have to worry much about anything else. Theme builder and pop-ups are available to pro customers, so don't worry about that. First learn building few pages. So you can click on add new from here, or there's an add new button here, so you can click on add new even here. Either way, you'll be taken to the same drop down pop-up menu. So here you can choose page, section, and if you don't have the pro version, you won't have header, footer, single, archive, pop-up. So you will just be limited to page and section. So page is actually a complete page, section is just a part of page. As these are templates, you can use them by embedding them using shortcodes or any other way. So we'll just create our first page. So we'll just call it my first page and I'll just click on create template. And like I told you, this is method 2 of reaching the Elementor screen. Either way, you'll be taken to Elementor edit screen. So if you want to add a category to a particular template, you can basically do it the way you do for normal posts. You can click on edit and you'll have edit template screen, and under here you can even change the visibility from public to password protected or private. You can also schedule this template to appear on a particular date, and here you can pick a category or create a new one. You can also change the attributes of this particular Elementor template. So this is very similar to WordPress posts, and this is how you change categories. You can either click on edit and change various options, or simply click on quick edit and pick category from here and change various options. Either way, it's the same. That's how you add templates to a particular category that you've created. Anyway, let's cancel this quick edit screen and let's now get into actual Elementor edit screen. This is part 4. So if you're unable to reach this Elementor edit screen from either a post page or a template, well, you can check the video on how to fix Elementor not loading, or if it takes too long to load. You can fix that. I have a video, I'll leave a link to that in the description. So you can follow that, and once it gets fixed, you'll have this. And if you want this page to be stretched across your whole browser window, you need to change this to Elementor full width. And you can do that by clicking on edit or quick edit and changing the template from default to Elementor full width. And if you choose Elementor canvas, it will just show the template itself. It will hide all the header, footer and everything else. So you can peacefully focus on this. So you can change your default template from here when you create template, or once you've created template, you can click on settings cog and you can change the status from draft to anything else. You can also hide the title of the page or any other template, and you can change the page layout to Elementor canvas or Elementor full width. Let me change it to Elementor canvas first. So I click on that the page will be reloaded and the header or any other template will be disappeared. It will just show me pure page template, so I can completely work on my page and then I can preview the whole page using Elementor full width. And if you want Elementor full width, this page will stretch across your website and this will actually show other templates such as your header, footer, as you can see here. But if you want to peacefully focus on learning Elementor, just click on Elementor canvas and then click here, click on this, so you'll be taken to widget screen. So anywhere, so this is your Elementor editing screen. This is where all the magic happens, and don't worry, this won't be available to you. This is a third-party plugin. Since I've installed it, I have this option. You can also install it for free, but anyway, you have a plus button which basically adds a section. You have a folder icon that will basically add a template. So your Elementor edit screen has two panels. One is the side panel on the left and the second is the preview screen. So whatever you design and add content from here, you can see the live preview on the right of your actual edit screen. So that's really neat. And let's see what these features are or what these interface elements are. So there's a hamburger icon and there's a dots button. Then there are various widgets. There's a settings cog. There's something called navigator. There's something called history and a desktop icon and a preview changes button. And of course, once you're done designing, you can click on publish or save as template or save as draft. That's what you can do from here. Anyway, so no matter where you are in the website, you can simply click on this dots icon to get to your widget screen. So no matter if you're adding a new section such as this one, so when I clicked on adding a new section, the options have changed here. But if I want to get back to the widget screen, I just click on this and then I have my widget screen. So let me remove the section again. If you choose something else from here, or if you click on something else and if you're viewing anything else, you can click on this dots icon to get back to all your widgets. Here you'll have the list of widgets that you can use to build your templates. So that's what this button does or this icon does. And next you have a hamburger menu. Let's click on that and you can set default colors. And as we've disabled the color palette, it will inherit the colors from our theme. That's what we've set it to. You can enable that. Also, we've disabled default fonts. You can also enable that in the settings. You can have a color picker. Maybe if you're using a color palette for your brand, you can specify all the colors there. So you can give any color here to match your brand. So you can maybe make it white or pick a color from here, just like that. And these will be accessible to you whenever you're designing something. So whenever you want to reach the color palette, you can click on the hamburger menu and click on color picker. If you want to reset it, just click on reset and apply, and it will be restored to the default values or the values that come when Elementor was installed. So that's what it does. And then you have few global settings. And about Elementor, you can click on Finder. This is basically like Spotlight to find all your templates from anywhere within your Elementor screen. I have a Finder tutorial that will briefly explain the power of this neat little feature. Anyway, we'll have a look at it in a bit, and you can view your page or exit to your WordPress dashboard. That's what are the options that are buried inside this hamburger menu. So you can click on this anytime and these will be the options that will be available to you. So we're done with the top part. Let's leave the widgets for now and let's come to the bottom part. The first thing is settings. So you can click on that and you can have various options for settings. So you can set a background color for that particular template. in case it's a page here, so you can set a background color for the whole page, or you can change the title from here. You can also change the status from here. You can also show the title. If you unhide your title, it will be shown, so don't worry about that. And I've told you, you can change it to Elementor canvas or Elementor full width, and here you can pick a background color for your body. So maybe you can pick a blue background or a gray one or any other background that matches your design or the one that you're going to design. You can also add an image as a background image. This is a gradient. Anyway, we'll get into this in a bit, and we'll also get into padding in a bit. And advanced, you have something called CSS. I teach a lot of custom CSS on this channel, so this will basically help you do a lot of things that the custom Elementor style tab doesn't allow you to do. Anyway, so that's what this settings cog does. It basically takes us to settings for the whole page or whatever template that we're in. So if you're designing header, maybe it will take you to settings for that particular header. Mostly it will be common, except few templates such as pop-ups or theme builder templates. They'll have various other options. Anyway, we'll have a look at that in a later part. So we're done with the top part. We're done with the settings cog. Then the next one is navigator. We'll get to all these in a bit after basically designing a template. You can also collapse various widgets into groups. So if you click on this pro, all the widgets will be shown or hidden whenever you click it. And similarly, you can also show or hide basic widgets just like that. And these are the widgets that come with your WordPress installation and also supplied by your theme. So these are your WordPress widgets. And if you have any third-party add-on installed on your website, you will have those widgets as well. And sometimes third-party add-ons are baked into general or anything else. So you can also find few third-party add-ons that will be added to your general tab. Again, you can resize the left panel based on your requirement. Anyway, you better leave it default. You can also hide it just by clicking on this arrow. You can bring it back just by clicking on this arrow again. So that's the fundamental of the side panel. As I told you, we'll get into this bottom parts later. But first, we'll see the fundamental blocks of Elementor. Whenever you open a new template or whenever you open this edit screen, you can start from the scratch or use a template. If you're a beginner, I highly recommend to not use a template, because if you use a template, you won't learn how to design various sections and columns. Elementor basically has three structural elements. So no matter which kind of website or web page you want to design, these are the basic building blocks of Elementor. The first one is a section. As you can see, when you click on this plus button, it will allow you to create new sections. If you pick this, it will create a section with a single column. If you create this, well, it will create a section with two columns. Well, section is a bigger block that will hold smaller blocks, which are your columns. And your columns in turn hold the smallest blocks of them all. They're basically your widgets. So your columns and sections allow you to position your widgets based on a grid-based CSS system. And it's highly effective and responsive. So the first thing that you need to learn is to create a section. So section is like a row or a container that holds your columns, and your columns hold your widgets. It's that simple. So let's start by creating a section, and it automatically creates a single column. So you can click on the plus inside the column to add a widget. It will bring you to your widgets panel. You can expand all these widgets and drag any widget into this. So you need to click and drag, and just like that, your widget is entered into that particular column under that particular section. If you want to add a new column, you can simply right click, and remember, right click is the way you interact with sections, columns or widgets. So if you want to interact with anything, if you want contextual options, you click on the column, widget or section, and the left panel changes accordingly. But if you want contextual options, just right click and you have edit heading, duplicate. So edit heading will basically take you to the screen where you can enter various content and various other settings. And if you click on a column, it will give you settings available for that particular column. And if you click on a section, the left panel changes its content to show layout, style and advanced. So let me click on this section. Let me stretch it. So you can stretch the section to fit the width of the browser window. That's what it does. Content width is the width specified. So if you have a lot of content, so let's add a lot of content in here. As you can see, when I change the content width, the columns are rearranged to fit the width because the columns contain content, and when you change the content width, columns rearrange themselves to fit the width that you specify here. But if you want the columns to stretch to the full width of the section, just click on full width and columns are stretched and placed proportionately in your section. You can also specify the gap between columns, maybe a narrow gap or an extended gap, or maybe a wider gap, or anything else that you want. So based on the options that you pick here, the space between the columns is changed. Similarly, you can change the height of the section. So you can say fit to screen and it will stretch the section's height to fit the window that's available. Or you can also specify a minimum height that it should have. You can specify it in pixels, vertical height or vertical width. So no matter what you want, you can simply stretch it and the height of the section stretches, so does the height of the content within the section. So as I told you, your section acts as a container for your smaller blocks, which are your columns and your widgets. So when you stretch your container, what happens? Naturally, these contents will also get stretched. Basically, that's what's happening here. And that happens when you stretch the width or height. So when you change the width of your container, these blocks align themselves based on the options that you specify here. It's that simple. So you can also specify column position, where you want the columns to have. You can also specify content position within the column. You can also change that. Overflow, you can leave it as is. And HTML tag is for SEO purposes and we'll not discuss much about that. But here's a rule of thumb. Always maintain hierarchy. So if you're designing header, make sure you pick header tag for that. If you're designing a footer, pick a footer tag. And if this is the main area, you can pick it as main. And the next block, you can choose that to be article. And if you have a sidebar, you can maybe pick a side tag. That's what these options are. So you need to click on this plus to create a section. And then within a section, you can create various other columns while creating the section itself. Or if you want to have multiple columns or add a column within a section, you can go to this folder icon, right click on it. As I've told you, right click gives contextual options based on the element that you're clicking. So if you're clicking on a section, it gives you contextual options for that section. So you can edit section, which will basically take you to this screen. You can also duplicate section. So within your section, you have your column, and within your column, you have your widget. And when you hover over your section is highlighted in blue line. When you hover over your column, it's highlighted with this dotted line. You can create a new section by clicking on this plus or even this plus button. It effectively does the same. So it will create a new section for you and it will ask you to pick the column structure. That's what this plus button does. So if you click on a plus button within a column, it will ask you to pick your widget. That's what it does. So this blue plus button is to create a new section, and this gray plus button is to create a widget, or it will ask you to drag the widget that you want within this column. And if you want to add another column within this section, you can do that while creating the section itself, or right click on the column and then click on add new column. And just like that, within this section you now have two columns. You can see that. So you can see the column being highlighted by the dotted line and the section being highlighted by the blue line. So it's that simple. So if we change the properties of the section, even the outline changes. So let me change it to fit the screen, and you can see the blue outline that basically specifies this is my section. So whichever is surrounded by this blue lines is my section, and whichever is surrounded by these dotted lines is my column. Similarly, I have another column. Let's add a widget to this. And you can see even the widget has a blue border around it. So whichever is surrounded by the blue line is actually my widget and its content. Let's drag another widget. So I'll click on this plus again. I'll click and drag heading widget into this. So that will basically add a heading widget to that particular column. So this is how you work. You create your section first, choose how many columns you want within that section, and then add whatever widget that you want to add within that particular column. Let me pick this, and there's other way to do this. So you can add a single widget and you can simply duplicate this column just like that, and it will create multiple columns within that particular section. So it's really neat. You can go back to your section settings. Let's see what options this section has. Now that we have 3 columns and widgets under each column, let's see what this section has. So the layout, style and advanced are common for a section or for a column or for a widget. Just that the options change within this. These 3 tabs are common. Let's start with the section. I'll click on the section. I can stretch it to fit that. I can specify the width of the content. So based on the content width, the columns are rearranged so that the content will be within this particular width. You can also specify the gap between columns, and it follows the rule above. So it will have this width, and within that width the columns will be spaced around. So just like that, the content width won't change because it's what we've specified here. However, if you change it to full width, they'll be stretched to entire portion of the section, and then the columns are spaced based on the options that you pick here. Height, you can pick fit to height, so that will stretch the section to height, or you can specify a minimum height. I'll just leave it to default. Content position, you can also change the content position. Overflow, and if you're not happy with the columns structure that you've created for your section, you can also change it here. So you can have this particular layout, this particular layout, this particular layout, or this particular layout. And if you're not really happy with the options that you have, you can move over this gray dotted area, click and drag, and that will basically change the column width just like that. So you can change the column width just like that, just by clicking and dragging the gray line. That's basically the border between this particular column and this particular column. So you can click and drag it. So columns will be spaced based on how you drag it. Let's drag it back, or let me click on this and let me pick the evenly spaced column structure. So that's how you change the column structure. So that's the layout tab within a particular section. We're done with this. You can go to style tab, and you can see that there is an option to add background. So there are various colors or various types of background. So you can add a classic background. So when you click on that, you can either choose a color or an image. So let's choose a color. So that adds a color to the section, but not the column or the widget. But as these blocks are contained within the section, they inherit that particular background. So whatever you do with this particular column or this particular section will be affected, and they'll be applied to this particular widget. Just think of this: you have a bigger block and then you have smaller blocks within that. So if you paint the bigger block with a blue color, when you open the block, you can see that even the smaller blocks will look like they have a blue background color. So that's what is basically happening over here. So let me add a minimum height to the section. Now you can see it, and you can see this is my column and this is my whole section and this is my widget area. So you can add a color, and if you want to clear the color, just click on that again and click clear. So that will clear out any section color that you have set. You can also pick from here. So you can pick any color that you want, or if you know the hex code, you can simply enter the hex code here. So this is the transparency slider. So you can pick the opacity of the color, and based on that the color changes. So you can pick any color you want. It's all up to you. If you have branding colors, you better pick your branding colors. You can also pick a background image. Let me pick an image for this. So I'll just pick this image as a background image for this section. And you can see that I don't see my color now. That's because it's basically dominated by the background image. So when I remove that, I can see my background color. So I can simply add a background image. I can clear out the color. Or you can have it as a fallback when the image doesn't load, so that they'll see some basic color instead of plain white color. And here you can specify the position of background. So based on the position, the background image changes and positions itself. Various settings, you can play with various settings over here. Attachment, you can say scroll. So when you scroll over, so when you say fixed, it adds that neat little parallax effect. So when you scroll over the column, the background attachment or the background image won't scroll, it remains fixed, and that will add that neat little parallax effect. If you want to repeat the background, in case you're adding a pattern to your background, you can choose repeat. So background image is repeated. Since my image is really big, I can't see its repetition. Let's pick a smaller image so that we can see the image being repeated. So I'll just pick this image, and you can see when I say repeat, my background image is repeated in here. Let's say default, and it's repeated along X and Y axis as well. But if you want to repeat it, so basically this is useful when you have a background texture. So having background texture is a part of web design, and if you know what I'm talking about, this repeat is then useful. Otherwise, you can simply set it to no repeat and then position it wherever you want. So your background image will be positioned just like that. If you want to delete the image, again click delete and your image is gone. So once you add your image, you also might want to make it clear that the text on the image can be readable. In order to do that, you can add a background overlay. So again, this overlay can be anything. It can be a color. It can also be a gradient. We'll talk about this in a bit. So let's add a classic overlay. So we'll add a color overlay on top of this. And now you can see, now I can clearly read the text, and I can also see the image with this overlay on top of it. So you can maybe reduce the transparency of the color so that I can clearly see both the image and read the text as well. You can clear it out if you want. You can also add another image as an overlay. That will basically freak him out, but that's what it is. And then you can set its opacity and also the position and various other options if you want to set it. So you can set an image or a color as an overlay, and then even change the size of it. You can maybe say cover, contain, and various other options and all that stuff. Anyway, it's better to just have a color on top of the image as an overlay. It's a good practice. Again, we'll go back to our background of this section. So here I have image, and that's what repeat does. And then you can also pick the size of the image so as to better fit the column. So if you say cover, it stretches out and it fits the entire column or the whole section. If you say contain, it will just have its own real width, and you can also specify some width in percentage. You can maybe play with it however you want. Anyway, let's remove this for now. I'll just settle with white background or maybe a gray background. So you can also do the same thing with overlay. And in addition to classic, you have something called gradient. It does what it says. You can pick two colors, the primary color and the secondary color, and then change the type of gradient and also the position. So you can play with this and achieve any gradient that you really want. So this is what it does. And if you want to set a video as a background, you can simply click on this and then paste your YouTube video URL, and you can also mention the start time and end time, and you can have an image as a fallback in case the video is deleted from YouTube, or if it's not loading, this image will be shown in case the video is not loaded. As I don't have any video here, the background fallback is shown by default. So that's what it does. So that's background, and that's under normal. And under hover, you can have various other options. So you can have a gradient appear when you hover over it. This won't be visible normally, but when you hover over it, you can see the background gradient appearing over there. Just that simple. So normal tab is when the user normally hovers over this, and you can clear out all the hover settings so that nothing will be shown when he hovers over this. You can also show an image when you hovers over this. Normal, you can hide it, so it will be shown only when you hover over it. So these are the various effects you can try. And again, on hover, you can have a classic background or a gradient background. I'll just clear it out. We'll come back to normal. So that's what this normal video background does. We're done with background. Now I'll minimize it. I'll click on background overlay, and these are the same options. You can have a background overlay normally, and you can have a different background overlay on hover, and you can also have CSS filters similar to Photoshop filters. So you can adjust the blur brightness on hover to achieve various effects. So you can have all that stuff. And border, you can specify a border for it and then specify the width of the border and also the color for that particular border. So you can maybe say blue border. If you want to see this clearly, just hide the side panel and you'll see everything clearly. You can see the border around here. So that's really neat. You can also have border radius. This will allow you to round off the corners. So if you increase the border radius, maybe if you increase it to 50, you can see the border is rounded off at the corners, and this is how you achieve rounded corners in Elementor. So you can clear it out. I'll just have none. I don't want any border or border radius. You can also have box shadow. So you can specify the color of the box shadow and add horizontal, vertical and blur for it. And also spread. You can also increase the spread. So this is how your section would look like. If you want to clear any property, you can click on the reset icon and each property will be reset to its default value. So we're done with border. Again, even in the border you have hover tab, so you can maybe have a solid border when you hover over it, just like that. And normally you don't need to have any border. If you want to have a dotted border, just like that on hover. Anyway, I'll just clear it out. So that's what border does for this section. Shape divider. This is really interesting. So for each section, you can pick a shape divider. And you can see the shape divider at the top here for this section. You can also change the color of the shapes divider so that you can see it clearly. So these are dynamically generated. You don't have to write any code, and you can pick various shape dividers. You can pick maybe drops, maybe clouds, or any other option that you have. So you can pick shape divider for top, and for bottom separately, so you can have different shape dividers. And you can also change the width and height of shape divider. So maybe you can increase the height of these shape dividers based on your liking. Just to achieve the kind of effect that you really want. So you can also flip it, bring it to front and invert. I'll anyway clear it out and I won't have any shape dividers. So those are the various options for shape dividers. You can play with them, you'll understand it. So under typography, you can set some default settings. So when you add columns or text within this particular section, these properties will be applied. So as you can see, I have a column and heading widgets under this. So watch what happens when I change the heading color to blue. So any heading which is added within this section will have blue color. So any text which is not heading will have a green color. Let's test it out. So I'll have a text editor widget within this section, and you can see that it changes its color to green because those are the properties that I've set here. So these are like the global or the section level settings that you can tweak. Of course, you can tweak them individually. So you can go over here and pick the text color. Maybe you can have a different color that will override the section settings. Anyway, we'll get into that in a bit. We're more concerned about all the options in this section. Similarly, you can change the link color and link hover color from here. You can also align the text however you want. So whatever text you add within this column will be aligned based on the options that you specify in here. So that's the style tab for section. And next you have advanced. So it will add a margin. So in order to understand margin, let me duplicate this section. You can see this is one section and this is another section. So margin is basically the gap between this particular element and the next element. So watch what happens when I add 100 margin. So it adds 100 pixels margin on the top, 100 pixels margin on the bottom. You can see the space between this column or this section and this particular section. There's a lot of gap. That's what you've added here. And if you don't want separate values, or if you don't want the same values for both top and bottom, you can unlink them so that you can individually have just the bottom value. So the bottom portion is separated by 100 pixels from this particular section. So that's what it does. Padding, it will compress the content within that particular section. So if you add padding on all sides, it will basically squeeze the content or squeeze all the elements within that particular section. So that's what padding does. Padding, remember, padding is to squeeze and margin is to separate this particular section from other sections or other designs. So you can again unlink the values and have different values. So maybe you can have 0 on to the left, 0 on the bottom, and play with all the values together. Anyway, we'll just set it to 0. Then there's z index that will help us stack this element on top of other elements with lower z index. Basically, that's the function for it, and it's a CSS property. Anyway, I'll talk about that in a later part. CSS ID is used to uniquely identify this particular section. CSS class again adds a class to the section. We teach a lot of that on this channel. Then there's motion effect. So you can choose to make this element sticky. So when user scrolls on top, this element becomes sticky. Or you can also choose bottom, and you can choose various devices on which this will become sticky. So if you don't want it to be sticky on tablet, you can remove that. You can also set an effect offset for this. So maybe after 100 pixels, this element will become sticky. Maybe after scrolling for 100 pixels, this element will become sticky. You can also choose an entrance animation for this particular section. So the whole section just animates when the user scrolls onto this particular section. You can choose the duration. You can also add a delay so that the section will start showing up after a few milliseconds. Under responsive, you can reverse columns within this section on tablet and mobile devices. You can hide it on desktop, tablet or mobile. We'll talk about this in a bit. Some attributes and custom CSS. So that's what this or any other section in Elementor has. Okay, so we can specify the column width from here. So other column adjusts its width based on the width that you enter. If you have multiple columns, those multiple columns will basically share the width that you enter. So if you make this 60%, the other columns will have 20% each width or something of that sort. So you can have something like that. Let's just settle with 2 columns, and here you have something called vertical align, and you won't see much difference unless and until you have a similar column which has the same content. So let's say if you're adding a price list or something, let's duplicate this and text editor. Let me type and you can see that the elements are unevenly positioned here on this column. By default, they'll be positioned like this. So they'll be unevenly positioned. So your icon will be next to the text editor and your text editor will be next to your heading or something of that sort. But if you want to add uniform height across the column so that both the columns show the same content side by side, just click on this, change it to space between, and again click on this column and change it to space between. Once you do that, the content area is similarly aligned and you'll get a uniform design that even though you don't have proper content to match the height of this other column content. There's something called horizontal align, and if you want to know that, you need to know a feature which was released recently in Elementor version 2.5, which is inline auto. So you can click on any widget and you can click on custom positioning and you can change the width to inline auto. You can do the same thing. So once you do that, these widgets are aligned side by side. So you can click on this column and align them properly. So you can align them towards the end, space them around evenly, space around them, space evenly. So that's what this horizontal align does. And you can add any widget space between the columns, and HTML tag I've already told you. Then there's style tab. You can have a classic background, which is basically an image, and then also have a background color or a gradient, and on hover you can have different things. You can add a background overlay as well. You can also add a border, normal and on hover. Typography, again, I've told you that when you set typography settings for the whole section, they'll be applied to whatever content is within that, unless and until you have overridden that with settings for each column or settings for each widget. Let me show that. So let's say I have a text editor widget. I'll duplicate this. So I'll click on this column and I'll get the settings for the column. So under style, I'll go to typography and change the heading color to blue. So by default, whichever heading rests within this section will have a blue color. Now let me click on this column. Let me go to style. Let me click on typography and let me change the heading color to green. And you can see that it overrides the settings that you have set for the whole section. That's because this heading widget is within this particular container. So whatever properties you set for this container will be applied to this, and they'll override the properties that you have set for the bigger container, which is your section. Similarly, you can also have a different color for this, which again overrides the default section color. So let me add a new column. So let me clear out. So let me clear out the typography settings for this column. And you can see it has blue color because that's the default color we've set for the whole section. Unless and until you change the typography settings at column level, they'll have the color that is specified at section level. And you can even override these settings with individual color. So you can click on this heading, go to style, go to typography, or here you have text color. So if you have a different text color, this overrides the setting that you've set in the column level. So section level, column level, and at widget level. So the hierarchy is that widget level overrides your column level and your column level settings override your section level settings. So whatever you have for the section can be overridden with the column, and whatever you have for the column can be overridden with the widget itself. So or the widget that rests within. Or you can do that with CSS. If you want to do it with CSS, you need to clear out all the style that you've applied here. Let's take another example. So there are other settings here. So you have different text align. Again, you can click on this and you can change the text align of this particular column. You can see this column overrides the text align settings of this section. So again, widget level is the highest. So whatever you set at widget level will be the actual final version, and whatever you set at column level will override the section level. So that's how it works. In order to reach these three tabs or the Elementor interface for that particular widget, section, or column, you can directly click on the icon. If you click on this pencil icon, you'll be taken to its widget settings where you can change the content, style, and advanced. And similarly, if you click on this book icon, you'll be taken to the column. And if you click on this dots icon, you'll be taken to the section level settings and various other options. There's other way to do this. Like I told you can right click and click on edit section and it will do the same. So you can right click and where it says edit heading and click on that and it will take you to the same place. That's equivalent to clicking on the icon itself. So I can simply hover over this column or wherever there's empty space, and wherever there's a dotted border, when I right click on it, it will show edit column. I can click on that and it will take me to column settings. It's that simple. So from here you can change various settings. You can add style, border, typography, and finally you can also add margin and padding to each column. So you can have 100 pixels margin, and as you stretch this column, the other columns are stretched to better fit the container. So think of this as a flexible container that will have a proper alignment for all the inner containers. So you can have a padding over here, you can add margin for this column, and a lot more. You can also have motion effects, entrance animations. You can also hide it on desktop, show it, and all other stuff. So these are the common settings found on any Elementor column. Okay, now that you're comfortable with sections and columns, now let's get back to the actual content part, which is your widgets. So you can add sections or columns and then format them however you want. And then ultimately you need to have a widget within a column or a section. You can simply create a single section and a single column like this. Click on the plus and then drag a widget into it. Or if you drag a widget right here, it will automatically create a particular section and a column for you, because the widget alone cannot exist. It needs these containers. So Elementor will automatically create that. Anyway, the formal way of doing it is to create a section, and then once you create a section, a column will be automatically created. So within each column, you just add your content widgets, and you can add widgets and they take up 100% space. You can change this by going to advanced, custom positioning, and you can change the width to inline auto. So it will just take up the space that it needs. Anyway, you can leave it to default for now for the sake of simplicity. And what if you want to have widgets side by side within a column? You need to add something called intersection widget. So that will allow you So that will allow you to have two particular widgets within the same column side by side. By default, you can add widgets vertically, but if you want to have them side by side, you can simply add an intersection widget. So in this column, you can simply drag in the intersection, and it has an intersection where I can pick two widgets. So I can have a text widget here, and I can click on my widgets button, and maybe I can have my button here. So within this whole section, there is an intersection. Basically, it's similar to a inner column, but they call it intersection for some reason. Anyway, so once you add this, you'll be able to add widgets side by side. So that's what this intersection does. Mostly you won't need it, as you have a lot of flexibility and a lot of options. So you can simply drag a widget, and if you try to drag another widget, it will show you a blue line where you can drag it across the interface. So just try dragging it. Whenever there is a solid rectangle, it means that you can drop that widget right there. Okay, let's remove this. So I have a section and a column and two widgets. So for each widget, the content will be different. That's quite logical because each widget is doing a different thing. So it needs different content to show it to the user. So for example, the heading widget will have your text. So you can enter any text just like that. And you can add a link to this heading widget. You can click on this and can type your URL or paste it here. And you can also choose to open a new window, add a nofollow link. This is to prioritize your SEO rankings. Anyway, that's out of scope for this tutorial, so I'll talk about that in a later part. And you can also pick the size from here. You can go all the way up to XXL. Don't worry, I'll explain each and every widget separately. There'll be a playlist called Elementor Basics. Keep checking that playlist so that I'll be posting and explaining each and every widget in Elementor so that you can be a true master in Elementor. So I'll just explain few basic settings here. So for text, you have these options, and as I told you, the alignment here overrides the alignment of the column. If you go to style for your heading widget, there will be logical options which are related to this particular heading. So you can have a green color heading. You can change the font. I've already told you to upload a custom font. So you can change the font just like that. You can change the size of the font, weight, and few fonts don't support the weight property. So you might want to see and carefully upload those fonts. You can transform all of them or capitalize and various other options that you have for the text editor widget. Anyway, I'll not go much into this. I'll explain each and every widget separately in Elementor Basics playlist that will be on this channel. So you can click on text shadow. You can add a text shadow just like that. Maybe a blue text shadow. Adjust the blur. And just like that. If you want to clear any property, click on back to default and those properties will be erased. And if it's a color, click on the color and click on clear, and that color will be erased. Advanced is the same for each and every section, column and widget. So these are the same options. So you have motion effect, entrance animation, background, border, custom positioning. This is separate for a widget. So you can click on any widget. You can click on position and click on absolute. This is not recommended. You can simply drag your widget wherever you want on your website. This is not a recommended method. So we'll not discuss this in this tutorial. I already have a video called 10 new features in Elementor 2.5. I've clearly explained all those features there. So we'll skip that because I explained all the features of the custom positioning here. Then there's responsive, whether you want to show it on desktop, tablet or mobile devices, and the same. So let's click on the widgets button. Let's drag an image widget, and as I told you, these widgets have content which are logically related. So an image will ask you to pick an image, and a text widget will ask you to type in your text. You can pick your image. You can also choose the size, maybe if you want it of this size, and you can also change the alignment, which will override the alignment of its section or a column. You can also add a caption. You can also link it to any other file. You can also change the width. So just like that, you can change the width. You can also specify a max width. So maximum, this will be the width and it won't stretch beyond this. You can also change the opacity. You can clear it out. You can also have on hover effects. You can also add a border and a box shadow. And again, advanced remains the same for all the widgets, sections and columns. So once you're designing your work, you can then come back to this part. Now let's see what this is. If you click on this, it will show you how your website is made up of. You can drag it around and place it wherever you want, and if you drag it onto the extreme right, it will ask you to dock it. So if you do that, it will be docked. This basically gives you a skeleton of your whole website. So here it's showing that I have a section, and if I click on that, it will show me I have a column. I can also click on that, and then it shows that I have a text editor widget and an image widget. I can choose to hide it and see my design. I can choose to show it again. This is to get a bird's eye view of your website. You don't have to expand each and everything by clicking on this. You can simply click on this and it will expand all the widgets for you. So let's add a couple of other sections and columns. So I'll add a couple of other widgets to the second section. I'll not fill in any content because I just want to show you what it is. We'll discuss each and every widget later. So just like that, I've added a lot of widgets. Now I can click on this and it will show me what my website is made up of. So here it's showing that first I have 3 sections. So within this section 1, I have a column and 2 widgets. You can simply expand the whole website layout just by clicking this, and it will show me that within this section I have this column, and within this column I have text editor and an image. And the second section has 3 columns, and within the first column I have heading widget. Within the second column of the second section I have image widget. So it basically shows you the bird's eye view or the skeleton view of your website. This is called Navigator. You can always use it to get an overview of your design while you're designing. You can simply close it when you're done with it. And as you're designing, all your actions will be auto-saved. You can click on history, and Elementor actually records each and every action as you're editing the template. Once you click on publish, all these won't be available, and the only thing that will be available are revisions. So once you click on publish or update, all those will be available under here. So here are the list of actions I performed till now. So if I click here, it will take me to this part where I just added the section, and I didn't even add the other section. So I can click on this. It's like time travel. So if you want to go back to any point in your design process, simply click on that and it will take you to that particular point of time. And once you click on publish, you'll have a revision. So every time you publish or update, all the revisions will be here. You can also restore between them. So let's say I just removed this column and I just added template. I just clicked on insert. So it just inserted my template. Now when I click on update, this will be saved as a revision. So I can click on history. It won't be available once I log out of my website. The only thing that will be available is under revisions. So I can simply click on this, and it will take me back to the previous point. If I want the actual design, you can click on that and it will reload that particular design. You can click on update to get back the design when I first just published. So this is how your history tab will work, and this is a neat little feature. So when you're designing stuff or when you're designing your site, you're actually designing your website for desktop. You're not actually making it responsive. In order to make it responsive, you can click on tablet and then change various options. So when you click on tablet, every property that can be changed for tablet is highlighted in blue. So whenever you have a blue tablet, it means that you can change that particular property for that particular device. So here I chose tablet. So whichever is highlighted in blue, its property can be customized for that particular device. So on desktop, you'll basically have this alignment, and you can also click in here and click on the tablet version. So it'll basically do the same. You can either pick tablet from here or can click wherever you see the desktop icon and click on tablet. It's the same thing. So on tablet, maybe you can have a justified text or a aligned text. On desktop, it's a normal text. So you can do that for any property. So on tablet, maybe you can have, on desktop, maybe you can have one column. Maybe on tablet, you can have 2 columns. On mobile, you don't need to have any columns. So similarly, wherever you see this desktop icon, it means that you're changing that property for desktop. And when you click on this, you're basically changing your designs for tablet. Remember the breakpoints that we've set, this particular setting is that. So when you click on the tablet, you're basically setting the properties for that particular width. So when the width of the browser reaches this value, these properties will be applied. And not all properties are responsive, and every responsive will have this desktop icon. So you can click on it and choose mobile and choose a different animation or anything. So that's another property. So you can also preview your design simply by switching between tablet and mobile devices. You can simply close the side panel just like that, and then you can preview it on your mobile device or on your tablet device. You can then click on publish. If you want to preview it in a new page, you can click on that and that will open in a new tab, and you can preview it just like a normal user. Of course, you will have your WordPress admin bar over here. So this is your page. So that's great. So that's the bottom bar, and that's how you add content to your widgets, and that's how you add sections within columns and then widgets within your columns. So we're all set. And there's another feature called Finder. You can click on Command or Control E and then trigger this, or you can click on this hamburger icon and you see something called Finder here. Either way, it will trigger this. It's like Spotlight. You can search for anything. You can simply hit dash and it will show you various things that it can do. So just play with it. I have a separate tutorial on Finder. I'll leave a link to everything in the description down below. And we'll discuss each and other features later. But this is what you need to get started with Elementor. I hope you liked this video. I'll talk to you real soon.
And that's it for now, and hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure to give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And if you need anything else, don't hesitate to ask. I'm ready to help you. Catch you in the next video. Peace.